English translation, 526th contact Saturday, the 27th of August 2011, 14:46 hours.
You have been waiting, Ptaah. Actually, I thought you were coming here with Quetzal today after our joint correction work with Bernadette. But the little rascal was already here last night, because he is busy elsewhere today.
He does indeed have important duties to perform today.
He said that just as we also repeated that fact.
How is the Book of Names correction work progressing? Florina has not yet let me know about it.
Florina and I, correct 30 typewritten pages per week together. That takes 3 to 3.5 hours each. She thinks that's enough for her and also exhausting. I think we should also not put her through any more, because correcting is really tedious for us, because Florina has to keep looking in the multilingual name archives.
That is understandable. It will probably also be exhausting for Anjana if she does the correction work with you from time to time.
I suppose it will be. Then I want to come back to what you have been asking me several times since a slanderous smear article about my Asket Nera photos appeared in a smear journal. Your questions were whether I could find anything of Phobal Chung's that she had explicitly stated in relation to her observation of my contacts with Asket at the Ashoka Ashram in Marauli. In this regard, we published in the Figu Bulletins number 21 of February 1999 and number 23 of July 1999, articles of opinion by the editor-in-chief of magazine 2000 Plus, by Michael Hesseman, which you are familiar with, but you wanted to know more. That's why Patrick showed me some things on the internet which I want to show you. Patrick says that there is more to be found regarding Phobal's statements, but I think that what he downloaded and then translated into German by Willem is actually exactly what you want to know. There is also something about the Asket Nera photos I took with my defective Olympus 35 ECR camera. There are also excerpts from contact reports that Bernadette also put into my computer. If you want to read what is written here in German and English.
Gladly, yes.
Why the Billy Meyer case is not a hoax.
1. Phobal Cheng and Mrs. Sashi Phobal Cheng, ex-United Nations diplomat for Cambodia as a child, stayed at the Ashoka Ashram, Marauli, New Delhi. Her grandfather was the head remark equal sign Buddhist monk of the ashram. She has a first-hand contact with Asket, her having seen Meyer and Asket together on numerous occasions, her having witnessed Asket's UFO craft hovering over the ashram on more than one occasion. She once entered her grandfather's ashram, saw two strange men in white robes sitting one on each side of him, speaking to him. She overheard part of the conversation, and when it was over, the men just suddenly vanished in the same manner, apparently, as Meyer himself has done many times at the beginning of a contact. So Phobal then knew that these men were not from Earth. A highly respected official breaks her anonymity a few years ago, 1999, and speaks out in front of crowds to recount her stories on this. And what, pray tell, does she gain by doing this except possibly drawing ridicule similar to Meyer? Mrs. Sashi, an Indian woman who had tutored Phobal in the Hindi language. Since coming from Cambodia, she and her brother had had to learn Hindi. She did not look much older than Phobal, and so perhaps had been no older than 20 when Phobal was 10, when she had seen Meyer and Asket in 1963, when Meyer still had his left arm. Sashi was a witness to Phobal, having spoken to her briefly several times about the woman Asket, who others at the ashram referred to as the goddess or some such, and about her ship in the sky. Also, Sashi herself saw spacecrafts above the ashram. So, Sashi is an important witness and corroborator of Phobal's testimony. More about this in Reopening of the Maya Case, International UFO Congress, 1999 DVD. 2. Sabar TV. Not until July 1976 did Billy purchase his first colour TV unit brand, Sabar, from Mr. Bear's Baumer store. Whereas the photos of Ascot and Nera were taken a year earlier, on the 26th of June, 1975. 3. Colour grid of the cathode ray tube. His first photos were taken with an old Olympus 35 ECR camera, which he, as a one-armed man, was able to utilise problem-free with only one hand. He bought this somewhat dilapidated camera. Its aperture ring was stuck in one position from his brother Gottlieb Meyer in January 1975 for CHF 50. And if, as claimed, the photos had been taken from a colour TV monitor in the 1970s. Any enlargements of the picture would invariably also show the three-colour grid of the cathode ray tube, which would show the colours blue, green and red arranged in 3 dots. This fact was previously investigated by Swiss photo technician, a printing specialist who worked with 10-fold enlargements and other enlargement tasks. In order to produce photo-sized pictures from a TV unit, Billy would have had to place his Olympus camera directly in front of the TV, since this simple camera possessed neither an automatic light meter nor a zoom lens. On the Ascot Nera pictures, no such colour dot grid of the television monitor is detectable that would distort the photos from even a minimal enlargement. Contact report excerpts regarding the Ascot Nera photos.
39th contact, the 3rd of December, 1975, 1:37 hours.
In the 39th contact report, which was recorded at 1:37 hours on the 3rd of December 1975, see Sim Yase, contact report block number 4, page 623 of the German edition with the brown cover. Message from the Pleiades, Vol 2, copyrights 1990. Ptaah pointed out that 2 women who look much like Ascot Nera live in the USA.
It was rather extraordinary that you were given permission to take photos of Ascot and Nera, since we have discovered terrestrial females who resemble them very closely and who, interestingly enough, also work together in a community of interests.
Boy, that is a shame. But the women, the doppelgangers of Ascot and Nera, where are they?
In the land of America. But I already said that.
Can you tell me their address and other details about them?
I would rather not do so for various reasons.
Was aware that there were lookalikes of Ascot and Nera in the USA in 1975, some 23 years before the skeptics found out in 1998. Why would Billy knowingly make mention of these in America in his earliest published contact reports if, assuming he hoaxed those photos, they would possibly be detected later on as the backup singers' dancers in a popular American TV show? That is actually more improbable to me than the whole MIB Men in Black fiasco, which, based on the amount of eyewitness testimony, should actually be given a bit more consideration.
39th contact, 1:37 a.m. On December 3rd, 1975.
In the 39th contact report, which was recorded at 1:37 a.m. on the 3rd of December, 1975, see Sim Yase, contact report, volume number 4, page 623 of the German edition with the brown cover. Message from the Pleiades, Vol 2, copyrights 1990. Ptaah pointed out that 2 women who look much like Ascot Nera live in the USA.
It was rather extraordinary that you were given permission to take photos of Ascot and Nera, since we have discovered terrestrial females who resemble them very closely and who, interestingly enough, also work together in a community of interests.
Boy, that's a shame. But the women, the doubles of Ascot and Nera, where are they?
In America Land.
Can you tell me their address and other details about them?
I would rather not do so for various reasons. Billy was aware that there were lookalikes of Ascot and Nera in the USA in 1975, some 23 years before the skeptics found out in 1998. Why would Billy knowingly make mention of these in America in his earliest published contact reports if, assuming he hoaxed those photos, they would possibly be detected later on as the backup singers-dancers in a popular American TV show? That is actually more improbable to me than the whole MIB fiasco, which, based on the amount of eyewitness testimony, should actually be given a bit more consideration. This is satisfying for me, but I would also like you to publish the whole thing in one of the next bulletins, because I think that many people are not yet aware of these facts and are grateful for this information, because many still believe the liars and slanderers in this matter and are addicted to untruth.
I will, of course, comply with your request. It is probably a good thing if I turn it into a special bulletin again, because it has been particularly well received, as I have been told several times by telephone. It will be number 64, which I have planned for November.
This is a good thing. Thanks. What I want to tell you now, I want to do without naming names, because as you told me again recently, you are not allowed to tell the truth openly, because Swiss law does not allow it. So you could be prosecuted if you or I name persons who are liars, cheats, swindlers, criminals, thieves and defamers, etc. That such persons are not allowed to be officially named is extremely regrettable. For this encourages them in their actions and deeds and, a fortiori, makes them do everything possible to spread lies and slander, to pursue thievery and fraud and criminal and swindling. There should not be such false legislation which encourages such persons in their unworthy actions and deeds and punishes those who resist them and bring the truth to light. But since it is so, the whole of this legislation proves that it is not only extremely illogical and unjust, but also that in applying it, a logical and just legislation is mocked. But now I want to and can also give you an answer to what we agreed at the official conversation on Thursday, the 18th of November 2010, namely that we will clarify very carefully whether the pictures of Ascot and Nera in Guido's book are real or fake. Even then, I told you that it would take a long time, and unfortunately it actually took some time to clarify everything, because in the past we had to do lengthy research to clarify everything. It is probably not necessary to explicitly list and clarify all our efforts and the related facts, because the only thing that is important is whether the Ascot-Nera pictures in Guido's book correspond to your original photographs and whether they are manipulated, or whether they are pictures that show the American doppelgangers. The fact is that at that time a malicious group, which you also know by name from various attempts on your life, the man Schmid, the very photographer who had already falsified your pictures in 1975, supplied you with original pictures of the two American doubles who appeared in a review. Schmid was forced by the group, under heavy threats, to combine the pictures sent to him with your pictures, to connect them with each other and to falsify them in order to discriminate against you later on and make you untrustworthy, for which the reasons are well known. During these machinations, it was also worked towards the fact that several unstable and self-exaggerated and self-important persons, who are known to you by name, had to become aware of the American female review dancers and the doppelgangers of Ascot and Nera respectively in the 1990s. The period up to that time was calculated in such a way that you and your mission had to be so well known all over the world in those years that a new and extensive intrigue and slander would cause a storm of indignation and thus a collapse of the mission. The calculation in this regard was based on slander, perfidiously evoked from the very beginning of your mission, that you had maliciously and fraudulently falsified the images of our beamships, as well as the images of your great journey. These slanders, which had already arisen at the very beginning, were also based on machinations of the aforementioned malicious group, because also for this purpose very unstable and pathologically self-overestimating, high-handed as well as notorious enviers and opponents of the truth were influenced in such a way that they did not leave anything out of consideration in order to harm you and the mission with lies, deception, insults, and slander. And as a result of the threats against the photographer Schmid by the aforementioned group, he himself also became an adversary against you and the mission, whereby the lies and cooperation of a certain former FIGU member suited him very well. It was the same person who also stole from you and tried to cause damage with like-minded people through tremendous slander. But this failed thoroughly because all the human beings remained devoted to the real truth, and thus to your mission and contacts with us Plejaren, and the more they became, the more they were. Schmid, the photographer, therefore, in accordance with the threat and compulsion exerted on him, combined your original pictures with original pictures of the review dancers, respectively, of the American doppelgangers, and made correspondingly falsifying manipulations on them. From these forgeries he made new slides, which he returned to you as your own originals of the Ascot Nera slides. But since you are not educated in photographic techniques, etc., you did not notice the malicious deception, but only afterwards, when the deception of the photographer Schmid, respectively, his forgery became public. So you considered the fake pictures which show Ascot and Nera, but also the two American doppelgangers, as real, and therefore they also found their way into Guido's book.
So 4 different persons have been manipulated together to form 2 persons in the photos, and 2 of the women are practically so similar to each other that they cannot be distinguished from each other.
That is correct, and with that the matter is finally settled.
But this does not silence the opponents. Actually, I find the whole thing of these manipulations and machinations just as ridiculous as the opponents who want to make profit by smear articles. Lies, cheating, insults, shenanigans, fake photos and films, as well as by slander, etc. concerning me, my photos and the contact reports, as well as my books, writings, materials, and my mission.
It will certainly be the case that the adversaries will continue with their lies and slander, etc., because stupidity, lack of consciousness, foolishness, stupidity, and reprehensibility cannot be cured. And that everything is really ridiculous, and that the adversaries also make themselves ridiculous. This is a fact that is undeniable.
There is no herb for stupidity. But now I have another question. Recently there was another program on television about the man with the iron mask. Is this story familiar to you?
Yes.
Then my question's about it. Is the story true or not? And if so, who was the man who was imprisoned in France in various prisons and ultimately in the Bastille, wearing an iron mask?
A somewhat detailed explanation is necessary. First of all, it must be said that since the time when the man was incarcerated, various rumor theories and conjectures about his identity have been circulating. All the rumors were not true, but one of the assumptions was correct. Namely, that the prisoner was a triple brother of the Sun King Louis XIV, who was born in 1643 and died in 1715. Until 1661, he was under the guardianship of his mother, Anne of Austria, who was said to have ruled France until then, but was in fact a dependent of Cardinal Mazarin, who commanded the French state. But only then, that same year after the death of Cardinal Mazarin, could he take over the regency of the state and also complete absolutism, in accordance with the motto, L'État c'est moi.
Sorry, French is not my strong point. How do you spell it? Write it for me here on this paper.
That's how it is written.
Thanks. That means something like, I am the state, right?
That is correct.
Then I remember correctly what I learned about French history. Louis XIV disempowered the parliaments after he took over the government, and from then on controlled the nobility, which he commanded at court, if I remember correctly. He also brought the Catholic Church into his sphere of power, while eliminating oppositional Protestantism. Although France achieved cultural and political supremacy in Europe under his reign, there was a huge financial mismanagement, as is also the case today in the European Union as well as in the United States and Japan. The result was national bankruptcy, which neither Louis XIV nor his successors were able to overcome again, and which was the real cause of the French Revolution.
You are well versed.
When I had to take the Arahat Athersata in and write it down, I studied French history, especially the French Revolution and its origins. I also came across the story of Louis XIV, but please, continue to explain the matter of the prisoner with the iron mask.
Louis XIV had two triplet brothers named Louis and Marcel, but they were unknown to the Sun King because their existence was kept from him by his mother. By an unfortunate remark, however, he learned of her in 1661, after all. From his triplet brothers who, due to birth difficulties, were born secretly with the help of the midwife only a few hours later, after Louis XIV had been born under great witness. Both survived despite the high mortality of newborns at that time. According to the law of the time in France, the triplet brothers Louis and Marcel, one after the other, depending on their age of birth, would have been rightful heirs to the throne after the death of Louis XIV. However, in order to prevent alleged confusion, Louis and Marcel were placed in foster families where they grew up, under false pretenses by Cardinal Richelieu. Louis looked so strikingly like his firstborn brother, Louis XIV, that he could become a danger to him, although he succumbed to error because Louis had no ambitions of succeeding to the throne. This in contrast to Marcel, who was nicknamed Pagnol, and who, together with various other intriguing machinations, tried to overthrow the Sun King and take over the regency himself. He was also arrested and imprisoned, together with his triplet brother Louis, who was the same in appearance as Louis XIV. It was Louis, therefore, who was given a mask to wear for the rest of his life, some 34 years until his death on the 19th of November, 1703. However, it is a fairy tale that it is said to have been an iron mask that was forged around the man's head, because it is true that a mask made to measure from black plush was made for him. He had to wear it throughout in the face of other prisoners, the guards, and every other person. Apart from being a strictly guarded prisoner, he was treated with courtesy, and could also enjoy exquisite food and drink as he wished.
Thanks for your explanations.
Then I will leave now. Goodbye, Edward. Worry about yourself. It seems to me you're in pain.
It is not worth mentioning, is just increased phantom pain in the arm, as it happens from time to time. Farewell, dear friend.